Before I call this meeting to order, there is no invocation on the program tonight. So I prayed for us because we're starting to talk about people's money. So we're in, the good God's with us. So call this meeting to order. Navy veteran Nat Feeney, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, Debbie.
Councilwoman Carumba? Here. Councilman Purdon?
Here.
Councilwoman Carr?
Here.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Here.
Councilman Corey?
Here.
Councilman Gibson?
Here.
Councilman Forbes?
Here.
Okay, now we have public comment. Anybody have something from the public to add to our, oh, there we go, Mr. Pino.
Honorable Mayor, Council, for the record, my name is John Pano. I'm a resident and a business owner in Bonita Springs. And I just want to say how privileged and honored I feel to be a part of this country in which I can get up and speak to my representatives and have that right to do so without fear of reprisal. I just want to say that a lot of times we don't realize how privileged and lucky we are. Having said that, I first off would like to say Bonita Springs history is so important, and the preservation of that history is very important, and we need to continue this. Our history starts with the country's history. To let it slide would be an awful shame, and we need to continue to invest in our historic preservation. Secondly, I'd like to talk about one of the best things. Bonita Springs grew up on it as an attraction. It attracts people from all over. It's a destination today. One of the big reasons is our parks. Our parks are awesome. We have some of the best parks for a city our size anywhere, and we continue to set the trends and the goals for other parks in the area. As a matter of fact, Estero called me recently to ask me about our kayak launch and where they got it and all the details about that. And of course, then I send them to the city for information. But we are setting the trends with our parks. They're awesome, and we need to continue to invest and work on those parks. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I agree with you 100%. Anybody else? Okay. Discussion of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Water Protection Grant Program. Can you introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, John Jenkins with Bonita Springs Utilities is here. At our previous meeting, Councilmember Forbes had asked, under the direction of all council, for us to inquire how we might be able to partner with Bonita Springs Utilities to identify where needs might be to look at some conversions from septic to sewer. In meetings with them, we identified some neighborhoods that may be quicker to shovel-ready projects, and we outlined a potential way of funding that through the grant program. We do know that there is monies available through the Florida Department of it, and it does require a 50% match. What we had looked at is Bonita Springs has already invested some of their engineering and design dollars. Unfortunately, that can't be credited towards the match, but we looked at taking the 50% and the city providing half of that and BSU providing half of that up front. And then they would work through a finance program with the actual residents to pay back over a 20 to 25 year period within their service fee, that cost as well. But we were looking to try to target not to have that exceed $50 each month. But John is here if you have any specific questions as well. We're not asking for, of course, this is a workshop, so there's no voting on this. We're not asking you to identify where our match would come from at this time, because we would still need to actually be awarded the grant funds. We're just looking for direction. If you're comfortable with the way this has been designed, to give Ellie the heads up to go ahead and submit, because we do not have a council meeting in between the next time this is due.
Comments from council.
Are we going to hear? Oh, okay, Jesse.
I was just curious on if we would be able to tap into the water tax portion of this to cover that.
Correct. You'd have different options. You could use the stormwater utility fee. You would also be able to utilize, there's some stimulus dollars you could utilize that we received, or you could use general fund.
Is it enough to cover? Bottom line, I don't want to be in a situation where we're going to be raising taxes, but I support the idea, and I'm just curious from our side of it, is there enough money on our side for us to put in our contribution without it being a situation where there's going to have to be a tax increase for them?
I think you could balance it with between different funds we have. So if you wanted to use a small portion of the stimulus funds, a small portion of the stormwater utility, or there's also an opportunity that Ellie will look into if the resident potentially qualifies for CDBG programming. If they're low to moderate income, we might be able to assist them that way as well. So,
Thank you.
Amy?
I'm voting, and I'm going to suggest that we follow this directive here, but I think there's a lot of questions that I had when I was reviewing some of the particulars of it. But and we've talked about this a number of times in the council, so I think we can use this as a catalyst to really start a substantive discussion among the council of whether we are in favor of proceeding with maybe a citywide conversion from septic to sewer. But I don't think we have enough information to do that. And I think before we had the concern about Irma and the other things that have hit us recently, we said we were going to invite John Jenkins here to give us some input into what Bonita Springs Utility knows about the existence of septic tanks throughout the city, and also to give us an update on how they have a policy of converting some of the older piping into newer piping so they don't have leakage and other issues. So I think I still want to have him come and speak to us on that topic alone. And this funding issue that we've already started to talk about, I think we need to talk about that. I think we need to engage potential residents to see if they want to do it, because it is a cost to them. I would like to know more about the environmental impact. What do we gain by doing this? So I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, but because this grant is available to us, and it's kind of disappointing that we have to do a 50% match, to be perfectly honest about it. And I understand, I think Fred had mentioned that this might be like a pet project of the governor or maybe of the state legislature. I want to know all about that. So I think there's so many questions I have in our mind that I'd like us, if the rest of the council agree, that we would have this go forward. I'm going to vote for this to go forward, but I think we should have a devotion to gathering the information that we need to have a policy decision come out of the council.
And can I also ask, are these standalone? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Are you done, Amy?
Well,
Yes, I am.
John Jenkins is here, and so could Mr. Jenkins give us a little bit of insight from
That's,
the perspective?
Exactly what I was gonna say. John, could you come forward? How much is it gonna cost each individual homeowner? Do you have any idea?
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. John Jenkins from Bonita Springs Utilities.
Good evening.
Thought I could blend in the background there. As the manager mentioned, we're trying to set this up in a way that's affordable for any of the residents that have to deal with this. So and there's no, set number that is affordable, but we've been targeting $50 per home per month as what we call a special service charge or an assessment to pay to offset the cost of the collection system to be extended throughout the neighborhood and tied into BSU, and our what we call our ANC fees, which is similar to a treatment plant impact fee to offset the cost of the capacity they'll be using in the plant. So we're hoping that if the grant funds come in and the city match comes in, we'll be in a position to extend this, we think, on a reasonable basis. These are existing water customers already, so they would be looking at a $50 special service charge and then a monthly wastewater bill, another $30 a month, say.
Yes, Jesse.
The 50 and the 30, so the 50 is a one-time, and then the 30 would be pretty much a monthly?
No, they're both
Yeah.
monthly.
Okay, so they're both, so you're saying their water bill will go up $80 a month?
Yes.
Okay, so, then the other question is, okay, so neighborhood 1 and neighborhood 2, significant difference financially for us. So say hypothetically neighborhood 2 that only has 48 residential units, if we were to go in, I guess really my question is, are they standalone? So do we apply for the funds and say we got all the funds and we decided we wanted to allocate it to 48 residential units, do neighborhood 2 not raise anybody's taxes and figure out how we're gonna come up with the money that way, as opposed to trying to do 2 of them at 143, where we're looking at a significantly larger price tag. So I'm just curious, is it standalone or no?
That's really a city call. From our perspective, it's standalone. We can
Do either
do
or?
one.
Okay.
Yeah, we understand they're two separate projects. We can apply as one application.
I have a question for John. What is the cost of potable water and the cost of, with the water coming in at one price and going out at a different price? The sewage water is at one price and potable water is a different price?
Yeah, we have separate water and wastewater systems, and so you pay a monthly water bill. For your average customer here in Bonita who use about 3,000 gallons a month, that's, I'm probably a typical customer, and I usually pay around between $60 and $70 for our household for water and wastewater per month.
Well, the amount of water coming in and it equals the amount of water going out, basically?
Yes.
I mean, you got so many dollars per thousand coming in potable, and you got how many dollars per thousand for sewer? There's a different rate, right?
Yes.
Do you know that rate offhand?
Well, for water, you pay $8 base charge per month, and then I think the lowest tier is $3.66 per 1,000 gallons. So if you use 3,000 gallons, call that, $10, $12 in consumption fees, another $8 in a base charge, so maybe $20 a month on the 25 on the water side. And then on the sewer side, we have a higher base charge, which is closer to, I think, $28 per month is the base charge, and then there's a per 1,000 gallon charge based on your water consumption, so what we measure through your meter.
It's quite a bit more than they're paying now.
Yeah, I think I think it's fair to say that they would pay $50 a month for the connection, for the special service charge, and then probably, $40 a month on average for an additional wastewater fee. So that's the same everybody in the service area pays. They will pay this extra $50, assuming we can achieve that, to offset the cost of the special benefit, which is putting all this infrastructure into their neighborhood.
Yes, it costs money.
Yeah.
Anybody else comment?
And
John, do you have an idea of how many septic tanks or septic systems are in Bonita Springs?
yeah, I know I've talked to some of you about this before, so I'll just give you a quick background. So BSU got into the water business in 1991, purchased the first wastewater plant, which Bonita Bay had constructed over behind the shopping center in the center of town and at the Prado area, and extended service and took about 40 or so what we call package plants offline. Those are small individual wastewater plants that were serving condominiums, mobile home parks, commercial shopping centers, and so forth. So that took place over a period of first 5 or 10 years. Starting in 1995, BSU undertook the so-called gravity expansion program. So BSU for the next 10 years, with the support of all of these residents, extended central wastewater service and took septic tanks offline for about 5,000 homes in Bonita Springs. So we have maps of this that I can present to you, but basically all of the septic tanks out on the beach, as you come in Beach Road heading west to east, all of the septic tanks that were north of Bonita Beach Road and south of Imperial River. Then when you get closer in, of course, you've got Bonita Bay on the north side of the river, and you've got the homes on the south side over to 41, Tamiami Trail. Then from there, between there and I-75, virtually all the septic tanks north and south of the river between Beach Road and Terry Street. All of those septic tanks were taken offline and tied into central sewer. So you had the big swath of the city that is tied into central sewer, and many of those residents are paying a special service charge, because BSU structured this in virtually the same way in order to offset the cost of tying them into central sewer. So you've got, and then in addition to that, all of the subdivisions that have been constructed in recent years are tied into central sewer. So what you have left are some neighborhoods east of 75 near Terry Street. You've got San Carlos Estates, which is the largest area geographically that has existing septic tanks. And those are large lots that are a little better suited for septic tank use. And then you've got an area close to the Golf and Country Club and Shangri-La. So right in there. But I say a lot of the heavy lifting's been done here. I mean, you could probably count, I don't know the number of developed units in San Carlos Estates, but throughout the rest of the city, you're talking hundreds, not thousands of septic tanks. There have already been thousands that have tied in. So a lot of that work has been done. It's more, and of course, I don't want to oversimplify this. There are septic tanks out east that are on 5-acre lots. Those are unlikely to ever be tied in, but they're not an environmental impact, and they're not economically feasible to tie in. So we've got maps, and we can show you, but that's essentially it. You've got the San Carlos Estates area. You've got the area south of the Bonita Springs Golf and Country Club, and we would be looking to further extend sewer in that area depending on any redevelopment that occurs with the country club there. And then you've got some of these areas east of 75 near Terry Street. And those, frankly, have come along after the original plan. They're a little more recent. You've got isolated pockets or isolated septic tanks here and there. The industrial circle area we've looked at in the past, that's on septic, but frankly, it doesn't have a lot of usage. Those are mostly just offices.
Hey, John, is the city, if you want to put a septic tank in now, is that allowed, or do you have to get special exceptions from the city? Does anybody know the answer to that?
I think city staff's
And the
probably in a
other
better position to answer that. I think
The other question is, if the sewer comes down your street, do you have to hook up to it?
yes, under state law, if you, after 1 year of notice, you can be required to tie into central sewer.
Good evening. There are certain locations where if you have an individual lot, you can apply to the Department of Health for a septic tank. Other locations of the city, if you're in a platted subdivision, if you're in an area that is close to existing utilities, then you do have to connect. So there are areas, but they're rather limited, where you could apply for a septic tank. Other areas, most of the city is required to be on central water and sewer.
Because I do remember we gave permits to some development not too long ago.
Yes, and I think that was one of the areas that we're discussing tonight,
Is
actually.
that? Okay, good.
No, it is not. I don't want to misspeak. I saw head shaking.
Okay,
Should it be? Wait a minute.
Well, I think what we
Okay.
looked for is these were the two that were shovel-ready, which would put us in a better
Perfect, right.
posturing for the
Yes.
grant funds. That's why these were.
Exactly, okay.
We can talk about future ones.
Thank
if
you.
more
So
funds.
what exactly are we
Bring
agreeing
us
to?
back on
yeah,
track.
push the buttons
Right.
around here. Okay, Jesse.
Okay, what exactly are we agreeing to at
You're-
this
You're
juncture?
giving direction to council, to staff to submit the grant application.
Okay.
If we receive the funds, that's when the decisions will have to be made. Do we accept one or two projects? How do we fund the city's match? And how do we work with BSU to determine, to make sure that the monthly payment is where it needs to be, and do some work with the neighborhoods?
And do we do the two, because it's better, Ellie said that it was better to do the, approach the both, right?
Yeah, for the record, Ellie
I'm
McEwen.
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't push a button.
What we're suggesting is we submit two applications, one for Neighborhood 1 and one for Neighborhood 2. It enhances our ability to be granted funds, so they're distinct and separate.
And they are standalone projects, so.
Yes.
they could-
Perfect, thank you.
So all we're looking for is direction. If you're all comfortable, then we'll proceed.
Do you take a vote on that?
No,
We don't vote.
But do I have some agreement from the rest of the council to open this up further, to have a more in-depth policy discussion?
I would agree.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So can I work with Arlene to
About what?
bring a green sheet forward, that we would have some discussion, and we'll list topics of what we want to have presented to us?
Can we have that after we accept the application? We can put the application in. If it's accepted,
has-
then we can just do
That's
all
what
the
I said, it has
talking.
nothing to do with that. This is, we already agreed to go forward with that, and I'm just asking the
We
council.
did?
Yeah, we just did. Didn't we?
I did see nod shake.
Yes.
You do not have to vote, as this
We
is
don't
a
have to
workshop.
vote.
We wouldn't have a vote. We just wanted some
Okay.
consensus of council.
So I just want to know if everybody, if it's just my idea, we won't go forward, but if somebody else wants it, then I'll work with our leader, we'll come back in the future and have an in-depth policy discussion on moving forward citywide.
And I would just say that I would like it to make sure it includes future commercial development in that.
Yes, Fred.
I'm in full agreement with what Amy's asking for, but I think we need to have people come in that are experts on these topics of how bad septic tanks are and all that, because that's the root cause. If it wasn't a problem, we wouldn't be going after it even though there's grant money. So I think we need to have that as one of the key things we need, then a better number of how many really are out there.
Correct, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John?
I'm in
is it-
agreement with you,
is
100%.
that, normal policy for you to split the upfront costs with some entity beside, like the city, or we have half of it, and then we got a quarter of it, and then we have a quarter of it? Is that anything new?
Well, I'd have to say that historically, BSU has mostly gone alone on this because we didn't have other sources of funding. What's happened in the last 20 or 30 years is that at a state level and at a local level, everybody's become much more concerned about surface water quality and about the economics of that. And we're starting to see funding become available for these sort of programs. And there's a recognition statewide, and I think there's plenty of acknowledgement of that in recent legislation that septic tanks are impacting our surface waters, and not in all cases, but in many cases, and that we've got 2 million of them throughout the state, and they need to be tied into central sewer. And so, I've been talking to Councilman Forbes about this for several years because he's pointed out that there may be some funds available, and we want to make this as easy as we can on the residents, and it's got to be cost effective or we can't go forward with it, and it's become much more expensive to do these projects in recent years. So although we have not really partnered with the city on this type of project in the past, if you can facilitate the grant funding and we can help with the mechanics of it, we think that's the best way to achieve a good result for these residents out there and make it cost effective for them, and hopefully, with the resulting environmental benefit.
Because I do have my button pushed.
Okay.
It is my understanding that if the city doesn't help, the citizens still have to connect. So the onus will be 100% on the resident if we don't do this partnership, or is it just arbitrary that nobody has to do it?
We're going for the grant.
No. Yeah, but the reason to go for the grant.
Well, right now, I think our view is that it would not be cost-effective to do it for the residents. We would not be in a position to make this an affordable payment for them. So we wouldn't be able to move forward
Right,
without this sort of
but
grant funding.
But we would want, but in the end, they would have to pay for it. Or no?
Well, they'll pay a portion of it, yes.
They don't have to connect unless the service is brought to their neighborhood, so to speak, is what my understanding is of the regulation.
Oh.
If you don't have a regularly, an easily accessible connection, then they are not required to connect.
Yes, there are some standards in the statute. So right now, we don't have the pipes there that would require them to connect legally. And we would not extend those right now unless we get some of this grant funding, because it simply wouldn't be affordable
Right.
for the residents.
But it would help our water quality to get the grants, and we can. So, okay, thank you for your
And
clarification.
it's a state program, right?
That's right.
This is a state program, yeah.
So we've got a bit of a chicken and an egg here. You know, you've got to kind of move forward and see if we get any of this grant money. And if you do, then you've got a good situation to help these folks out here. And if we don't, then we can take a step back and see what other options are available.
Right, me, Jethro.
I think we're making progress, and thank you, John.
Thank you. I think we received direction, so we'll be submitting the grant, and then once we get information back, we'll be bringing it back to council for actual decisions to be made next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, presentation of preliminary capital improvement plan. Is this Arlene?
So Mayor, no, we will be doing the introduction of fiscal year 21-22, our draft operating budget. What we like to do, as I'm going to have Lisa begin a presentation, but just as a reminder, we've got in front of you the handout of the strategic priorities. Our department directors, all of our staff created the budget utilizing these same strategic priorities that were adopted in 2016 and then revised in 2018. What we will be doing as a part of the budget process is reconfirming the approval of these as well as we move forward. As you'll see, this is carried throughout the entire budget, through the operating budget, and then each of the strategic priorities are identified in the CIP, so you can see which category they fall within. And with that, I'd like Lisa to begin our presentation.
Okay, Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Lisa Robertson, Finance Director.
Microphone.
Oh, here's
I got you.
Oh, great. Test.
Okay.
Yes, so what we have before you to start off is just to outline your calendar. This is our first meeting as we head through our budget, which will be finally adopted by Florida trim law in September. So at this meeting today, we are presenting you with the preliminary budget. The next meeting, July 21st, you will take the first of 3 mill rate votes. So next meeting, you will be asked to set your preliminary mill rate. That will be the rate that is on the trim notice that will be mailed out to every taxpayer in August. September 14th at 5:30, and those are by Florida law. We have to have those after 5 p.m. We could have them on Saturday if you choose. A little joke, but. So it's a tentative budget hearing. That'll include another mill rate vote. And then September 29th at 5:30 will be the final budget hearing, including mill rate votes. To lay it out for you all and for everyone. The first slide that you have before you are revenues by category. We tried to do as many things in our presentation pictorially. Most of these graphs are also in your packet that you have. What is most interesting about these revenues by categories is that you can see we are heavily reliant on ad valorem taxes at about 28%. And then the next highest concentration is half-cent sales tax. And then the next one is impact fees. Of course, impact fee is growth-driven. We do realize the closer we get to build out, that will probably be reduced. This revenue by categories, I like to look at the next slide as well, because revenues by fund type, to me, that gives a lot of valuable information. The blue there is your general fund. Your general fund is your operating. Sorry, I have my alarm for my 17-year-old. Sorry. Set for every Wednesday. Anyway, excuse me, as I was saying, that gives an idea of your revenues that you have available, unrestricted, so the city can make a choice about how it's applied. But you can see that it's fairly consistent, and it's even going to go up in the next couple of years. So that's positive. That we talked about the last couple of meetings. We're getting some positive indicators for the next year for the economy. That's what you see. So in the orange, your special revenues are actually primarily those large jumps are for non-recurring grant and capital projects fundings that we received. What we like to stress with it being non-recurring is that in the next year you do not see that flow. It's because we don't have grants in those funds. Now, if the grants should carry over to the next year, and we know a lot of our grants may be multi-years, then we'll carry that revenue over and carry that expenditure over, so the grant can continue, and the capital project as well. Expenditures by function. The function is a requirement of the state. These categories are actually laid out in state statute, and we have to categorize them this way, and that makes our financial data comparable to all other local governments in the state of Florida. The state rolls it up, and they can tell, for example, what local municipalities and counties are spending on transportation and physical environment. Those are our two largest categories, and as we've talked about before, those had significant increases primarily because of your capital and your grant funding that you received.
What exactly is physical environment?
That is actually your water. I could probably speak to that. It's your water, it's like water quality, water conservation, flood control is one of the categories under that.
Such a big element there.
It is. Well, you know, we have.
It's also the number one strategic priority in our, so it's the number one, so most of the capital projects are dedicated to that category, because flood control, water quality are the ones we identified, and we have the most significant amount of grant dollars in those projects.
Transportation is a road, and maintenance of the road?
And that's your number two strategic priority.
In this particular slide, it does include capital and maintenance, so.
Okay, thank you.
Expenditures by fund type. Again, I really like, I get excited about seeing the different funds, again, because you can isolate your general operating and your regular recurring costs, generally speaking, in your general fund. You can see that's the first section there. And not a lot of significant changes there. Again, consistent with what we're seeing in the other slides, your capital projects are actually where you're seeing the significant jumps, again, because of the major projects that we have going on. But it does. I mean, I think it's really exciting that our revenue, our regular operating revenue is going up slightly, at least holding steady. And then our, same thing with our expenditures. So I think those are all positive notes to come out of this with. Your ad valorem revenue, this is your real estate taxes values. We've had some good news since we met last June 1st, our first number was 4.65% increase in our taxable values. July 1, we were moved up to 6.13, which is outstanding. And we made sure we gave you all the other significant taxing authorities here in the county so you could see how everyone else is moving as well. And again, those are based upon January 1 values. So that's Florida law. It's January 1 they set, and then they reset the next January 1.
6 months ago.
Yes, it is, and it always moves in arrears. So taxable property value citywide. This gives you a chart of our recent years that we've had, and shows the growth that we've had in our taxable property value. Again, very, very good news for our residents and for our areas as a whole. The next slide actually isolates our downtown redevelopment area. That has really grown, and we're very excited about that as well. Real estate tax projections. What we're doing with this slide is we're actually showing three individual values of homesteaded properties. We used homesteaded properties. They are, by Florida law, they will increase this year 1.4%. So we gave you scenarios if these homes our Save Our Homes, and they increased 1.4%. Given the same tax rate, these would be the increases they would experience. And we use the same tax rate because that's what in your preliminary budget.
That's for homesteaded people?
Those are homesteaded people, yes. And
You
people,
can't homestead a trust, I found that out.
no, you can't. And residents and/or businesses that are not homestead really move so differently because they're so value-driven. Some of them are income-producing properties, commercial real estate, rental. Those fluctuate significantly different based upon sales categories and the category that they're in. So they're more difficult to predict. So we wanted to show you something that we could easily quantify for you. General fund history of unassigned fund balance. The first line there you will see is a preliminary estimate for where we would be at the end of this next fiscal year. We always take, in order to balance our budget, we roll everything forward, take into account where we're going to be, but please keep in mind that we're looking at over a year out. So obviously, you know, the number won't be exactly that for sure, but what I loved about it, if you'll look down to the next line, it's fairly consistent with what we know we just had with our audit. So that September 30th, 2020 is an audited number, a final number. And then we're really, all these things we're doing in the budget, we're still not losing ground with our unassigned fund balance. I think that's a good point to mention.
Very good, very good.
Debt service annual requirements. What we wanted to show you here is condense some information about your three loans that you have out and show you when they're actually going to be fully serviced and paid off, if you will. So the first one is our capital projects. That was from 2011. That one will be paid off this next fiscal year. So excited. The next one, downtown redevelopment, that was from 2014. Now that one will not be paid off until 2029. But what you see there is the average annual debt service there. And we even at the bottom made sure we gave you the funding source that we're currently using for it. Now, the caution and the asterisk there for the downtown redevelopment is we know that Lee County's participation, who are participating greatly from the real estate tax growth that we just looked at in this downtown redevelopment debt service, we know that their participation will end approximately 24-25. So there will be years between 24-25 to 2029 where absent any additional funding, the remaining debt service will need to be paid by the general fund. And again, that's something that we're looking forward. We're already watching. We can plan it out in whatever direction council gives, but we do like to make sure we let you know about changes that are going to occur, such as that.
So the revenue sharing stops in 25?
That's what we're estimating, and it's contractually limited so that they're not fully participating. They are participating up until a certain point. So once we have estimated, and again, we're estimating based on future growth of real estate.
Okay.
If that doesn't happen, it'll change a little bit. But we do project out so that we have a good feel of when it might end.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. And the last one is the land acquisition. And that one is relatively small in comparison to the others. That will be 2035. And I will turn it over to the city manager so that she can present to you her continuation budget.
So thank you, Lisa. What we did is very similar to Lee County, which we started about 2 years ago, is we presented you with an operating budget as is current level of service. And then what we've done is identified some new asks that we kind of walk you through that we did provide in the budget, and I have some additional items I'd just like to address that I did not provide that I would like some direction on. One of the things is we did have a vacancy, and we have looked at a little bit of a reorganization here, and we have taken some duties from that vacancy, eliminated that position. Lisa has taken on some administrative duties as administrative services, and Laura Taylor has taken over facilities. So we've divided those duties. But what we do need to still have is, and it's a not to exceed, but I'd like to request some funding so that we have the resources to use a human resources consultant as needed, whether that be through an attorney we need or through a specialist. We do know there's some updates that we need to address within our handbook, some updates on our employment application form, so we're consistent with federal law applications. So that would be as needed basis, but we would have those funds to utilize those special services, so we would not be replacing a human resources director. One thing that would not be affected in this budget, but I'd like to bring forward is, we look back and we had a consultant work with us back in 2012 to do an analysis of all the salary surveys of each of the positions we had. We did an analysis of that. What I'd like to do is work with Lisa instead of, I think we paid $30,000 or so for a salary survey. I don't think we need a new analysis of the positions or a salary survey, but we do need an adjustment in the salary ranges. So this is not to actually change anyone's salary, but it allows them the opportunity for growth so that the salary shift change. For example, we do know our median level code enforcement officer, the value of that price index of what we have is the starting salary in the city of Naples. So we know there needs to be some adjustment that just hasn't happened all the years. So we'd like to use the consumer price index to put an application to that and bring that forward to you for your approval so you can see where those ranges are. So that way we don't have long-term employees that cap at any level. We have the opportunity for them to grow and with us. The other things we'd like to talk about is we have an opportunity to put more of our invoicing and internal works for finance web-based. It would make it easier instead of the paper operations. Vendors could submit to us electronically. We can sign off electronically, and then it gets sent right into the budget recording system and make it more time efficient for our finance staff. That's the second ask we have. We do need to replace the banners in our downtown. We haven't purchased new banners for that for a while. We're estimating that cost there. We are looking with neighborhood services to provide some overtime, and this would be for special projects. For example, we do know that there are activities that happen on weekends or evenings where we're receiving complaints. The complaint would still need to come in during regular office hours with the administrative assistant, but then we could assign code officers during off times or different times, let them work a little bit differently to detect where that nuisance might be coming from and do some work on code reporting. But we wanted a little bit of wiggle room. A lot of them already do flex time for us, but we wanted a little wiggle room there for overtime as well.
Arlene, is noise a nuisance on the weekend? Is that
Correct.
code enforcement?
Correct. We work with the sheriff's office on that, but if it's a use that's causing the noise, that's where we can be a part of that process. So if they're not following the regulations of their use, or they're having outdoor music when they're not permitted to, those are some things that we can assist through the code.
Okay, so you call the sheriff on the
Yes,
weekends?
on the weekends, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He'll take care of it.
Matt has a couple items here I'll let him address with the BMAP.
So the BMAP program increase is really relational to a couple of things. One is the presentation we received regarding bacteria in both the Imperial River and Spring Creek. It's kind of tied to what Councilwoman Carumba was speaking of with septic tanks. But really the other impetus for that increase is the phase 2 of the bioreactor project is under construction right now. It'll come online probably in the early fall. And so there'll be some additional testing that we'll want to do to demonstrate the results of that project and understand what the improvements that we've done, what effect they have. So that was just a budgetary number we put in there for both of those kind of items. Bonita Beach Road Interstate 75 interchange maintenance is something that the city did have as an obligation stretching back to several years ago. But in 2019, we petitioned FDOT to install landscaping on the interstate quadrants. And so they have, and they essentially, they've gone through their warranty period. They installed a well, lots of trees, but now that maintenance obligation is going to come back to us. When it comes back to us, it's more expensive than when it left us. So that's what those dollars are there for. We reached out to them. We understand what they're paying a local contractor to maintain it, and that increase is reflective of what that pricing would be.
You realize I've had many emails from people in that area, and I've gone out and I've cleaned up It's one hell of a mess out there.
Oh, for sure. That's a little different issue with the roadway itself. We can probably address some of that with our landscape
Trash and
contract.
Sand and everything,
But-
it's horrible.
I actually just an hour ago was on the phone with an FDOT representative on that issue as well, to get them to deal with the roadway itself. But this maintenance contract, we can try to address some of the smaller things with that too.
I'm only gonna tell this lady, we're working on it. I told him last week, I said, Matt will be back Tuesday.
But we are actively working that problem.
Okay. You don't want me out there shoveling sand.
No, but I have used you to motivate some folks
Yeah.
to take
Well,
action.
You know, I'm responsible for all this,
I understand.
so, okay, we'll keep working on it, my friend.
The next item is park planning, and what that is as we come an opportunity for some ideas, sometimes we'd like to have the ability to work with a consultant to put some thoughts together, get some preliminary numbers so that we can then build a project. And this would be across the board for parks, period. So if we have a request to look at a pocket park or to look at a open space that become utilization, so for example, with Terry Street, there might be an opportunity for a pocket park there. We can work to put some ideas together and then get a cost estimate and then place it in the CIP. So it's some additional consulting dollars to be planning ahead.
Arlene, is that Dixie Moon involved in that?
No, that's a separate CIP for the Dixie Moon. We do have a CIP. When we go into that, we'll cover the CIP for that as well.
Very good.
So also additionally, we have taken over the Mosaic kayak launch. There are some deficiencies that we do need to address to make it ADA accessible. Some tree trimming we need to do, some things that we normally put by our parks, the animal-proof garbage cans, so we keep it clean, signage. So these are some additional, you'll see in the CIP, some changes we need to make to the Mosaic kayak launch, but these are operational expenses here.
And they come up periodically, though. There's like 2 different places Mosaic
Correct.
kayak comes up.
Yeah, it will come up in operational, and then it will come up in the CIP as well.
Just anything?
As we move forward on that, I'd just like to just keep in the thought process that maybe if we make it operational, maybe we talk to John about working on that one as well, since he already does one right downtown. So just a thought.
Oh, as far as yes, concessionary, is that what you're?
Yeah, if I mean, it's ours, and assuming we have the ability to use it for that capacity, instead of even thinking about letting anybody else, just keep it consistent with somebody who's been doing it with us in that proximity for a long time. Just my initial thoughts, and I haven't even talked to John, so I'm just put that out there.
I had the same thought. Sorry.
That doesn't happen.
But we
Push a
do
button.
have, as you know, originally, just to clarify, originally Mosaic, that was supposed to remain under the
Right.
ownership of the other
Yeah.
owner. To safeguard it so that it is remain publicly operated, we now have ownership of it. So in order to do that, we want to make sure it's kept to the standards of what we expect safety-wise and ADA accessibility.
I think John would do that.
Well, I just have I was going to talk about this in the CIP, but do we have any recourse to try to get it? Because I understand there were irregularities in the way it was constructed there, so.
No, the issue came up is when we were giving impact fee credits for parks, which is part of our agreement with them. They did construct an ADA appropriate facility. However, that facility is one that the way it was constructed will require constant maintenance and does have some long-term problems. And since Mosaic was on the way out, they've sold the project. We moved forward and went ahead and just had them transfer it. So both that and the parking associated have been transferred to the city.
If they technically met the criteria of ADA, it is not the criteria that the city expects to provide as a level of service.
Yeah, that's
that
an
we would feel
improvement.
But it's
liability-wise.
supposed to be used in the same way as a public launch?
Correct, that was
Yes,
the
it was a public launch previously. The difference is, as we've gone back and forth with that developer, we felt that it was in the best interest of the city to
So now
actually own it.
So now it's being taken care of by the city.
Correct.
And it were made.
Very good, that's an improvement. Any complaints? they haven't had any complaints, or we won't have any complaints in the future.
So the items that we just went through, Matt and myself went through, those are in and included in this draft budget. There are a couple things I just wanted to point out that we'd like some direction on. We have had several discussions with Lee County staff regarding the former library site. And we have done, Tony's done an assessment, we've looked, and we understand that would be approximately $20,000 a year that we would need to budget in operational funds to basically keep the lights on. It would be unoccupied at that point, but water, sewer, keeping the electricity running. And additionally, we would look to create a capital improvement line item of approximately $350,000 that would allow us to bring the facility to ADA compliance. The discussions we've had with Lee County staff is that the potential for us to take ownership of the building October 1, so it would come off of their books and go on to our books.
Oh, that's good, good.
So if there's direction on that, if you'd like us to include those two into the budget, and then our staff will begin conversation with Lee County staff to officially request a transfer and understand what they need from us to do that.
Move forward.
Okay.
You need a vote? Or just-
No, so our next budget will reflect those costs added in.
And the use of that space is going to be what?
That would be for your determination, the city council's
I was
determination.
just gonna, since I have my thing. No, I think
Sorry.
we also
You
need.
got a button here,
I'm
honey.
sorry, honey, I'm
You're not
sorry,
sick.
honey, I missed it.
I can tease her, it's all right. No, I do think that I'm in favor of going forward with this, but we also have to schedule a time for us to have a functional discussion about the function, because there are lots of choices here. And I think that if we are going to be doing any kind of capital improvements, even if it's just bringing it up to ADA, it might be different depending on what kind of functionality we're going to follow. So we have to do this together, but that's probably a good starting
I think
point.
it was a placeholder for us.
A placeholder,
No, at a
yeah.
minimum, these are the things we have to address.
Right.
No matter what use you have, and you're right, that ADA could increase depending on capacity of the building or the potential use.
Right.
But that would be a placeholder we would put in, and we probably want to build out future year funding as well.
So maybe you should put some planning guidance or something in there. I mean,
Well,
I don't know if you need it.
One of the
need a
things when we get
professional
to
do
the
that.
CIP, Laura will be discussing is we'd like to do an assessment of all city facilities, including the Lyles Hotel and the Recreation Center, to look at ADA requirements, minimum building code, life expectancy of air conditioning roof, technology, so whether, do we have the Wi-Fi we need, do we have the technology equipment in the facility, and create a long-term plan, so each of those can be built out, so we don't have any surprises where everything's at end of life at one time, like City Hall.
Right, and also to do that functionally, to make sure that we have our functions covered.
Correct, and we probably want some hardiness to we've not discussed with you all whether we want to add a generator to the recreation center, so that it could be used for additional uses during storm. Not necessarily doesn't meet the criteria for sheltering, but if there's operations that need to be there, or assistance, so we want to look to make everything multifunctional.
Okay, so we're actually just obligating 20,000 for the next year.
Correct, that's all we're
Keep the lights on,
And
we can schmooze the capital improvement over time.
Right, we're just putting a placeholder of the $350,000 in the capital improvement, which might grow depending on what the use is in the future.
Okay, Chris?
I was just gonna echo what she said about the Lyles Hotel. I've heard a lot of comments that it would be nice if we could move code enforcement out of the Lyles Hotel and turn the Lyles Hotel into part of what I would call the historical district of Bonita Springs. Return that use.
And we're gonna move our neighborhood forces where?
Here's your button.
Golly, I'm so sorry.
Come on, you're an educated person.
Well, we would move what I was talking about was if we took over the library, that would be a good place to put code enforcement.
Possibly, yes.
The only other item I wanted to bring up that could affect the operational budget was in recent unfortunate circumstances around the state. We wanted some direction of whether you'd like us to look into either with the current contract we have or expand a structural engineer to have on call for the city. We're anticipating that because of some things that have occurred, that there will be changes to the Florida Building Code. There might be a need for additional review of some structures or maybe doing surveys. And that could be utilized out of the, what we call the lockbox, the building funds. We could utilize those funds because it's building structure. And if you'd like to explore that, we could come up with a number that makes sense. So it does fall in the operational budget, but it could be funded out of the building fund.
And
I
that
think it might
building
be something
fund
that-
has too much money in it?
Yes, it's the one where we do have a requirement to spend down, but I think if we could put the resources in place so we have the expertise for us on call, we noticed a need for that recently, and I think that with changing circumstances, there probably we should be anticipating there'll be changes to the Florida Building Code as well.
Because of our older buildings fall down, like they did in Miami. So that's the current
Sounds prudent to me.
thing.
So
Okay,
if
yes,
that's,
Fred.
if that's, good, we'll bring back some idea of funding numbers.
Mike, I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
Arlene.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think it's a great idea. What you keep hearing in the news is they're hammering Florida for not having stronger requirements, but they do say that the state allows local municipalities to go above and beyond, so I think it'd be a good idea if we went above and beyond right now, and then hopefully if the state does mandate anything more, we're already at that level, so.
Okay. Fred?
Well, all I was gonna add is, I know that we have buildings that are multiple floors, like 10 or 12-story buildings, that were built at least a decade before the one that fell down on the southeast coast. And so we're needing to look at these things real seriously, from an engineering point, to make sure that they're safe, make sure the repairs that need to be done are being done timely, all that.
Is there a requirement for the HOAs to do that independently, structural sound?
Well,
there's
if it falls down, they're gonna be at the point of the spear of liability, but we have a duty to the public to kind of facilitate them doing things.
Okay, the state's gonna come up with some rules and regulations in the
Yes.
near future.
So let me,
We have the money to take care of it.
we probably don't need to deal with this from a policy standpoint, because what we could do, and we had some conversations with the building official during the early part of the week, just after what happened in Surfside, is we could seek a local amendment to the Florida Building Code to require something like a recertification process like they have in Miami-Dade. The problem with that is that requires probably a lot more work and process on our part to get that adopted, and then it has to be adopted statewide within 3 years, otherwise it expires. In all likelihood, because of what happened in Surfside, there's going to be a change when the new building code gets updated in January. So what Arlene is asking for is basically to start budgeting for a position to deal with the changes, not for us to start thinking about what changes will occur. We expect it's gonna happen. We just wanna make sure we have the money to do what's necessary when it does.
Right.
And when we say position, that could be a consultant on call, so we'll see what that fabric looks like, or we have an existing contract with folks that we can extend, but we bring back the numbers and we understand that can be funded from the building fund.
Okay, moving along, what do we got now?
That completes the additional asks and direction for the continuation budget.
Okay, mayor and council?
Any questions on the operating budget from us, or any specifics that you wanted to address in there? And as you time, if any of you would like to meet with us one-on-one to go through any of these or any questions, Matt and I are available to do that, to go through the operational budget with you.
Would that be the best way to do it?
Yes, if you've got individual questions that we can help, and we can get you the information directly on what it is.
I would just ask a question. Do you feel that with this you adequately have everything that you hypothetically may need? Is there any areas where you would, maybe you were, well, that might be a little bit, so I don't know if I want to put it on there. Is there things that you have in your head that are maybe not on here that we should at least consider before we get too much further ahead?
No, I think if we address the asks that we just provided to you, I think we will be in pretty good shape for right now.
Okay, Mayor and Council.
May I just have, I do have,
Are we making sure they're hack-proof?
Did you push a button?
I did before, and no one answered me.
Oh, are you?
Okay, Chris,
Yeah, I mean, like.
Are
the
you
one
on-
where we're gonna
are you
do
on
more
deck?
billing is-
Councilman Forbes, have you pressed your button?
Pardon?
You need to press your button.
Yeah, we got.
Oh, you're
Here's a-
talking about
here's a
the
key.
software upgrades? Is
Yeah.
that- Oh.
To make sure, I mean, like the one where we're gonna do a lot of business transactions.
Well, to be clear, we have a policy, the staff has a policy, myself, that we do not do any wire transfers, period. The city does not, unless it's an exclusive situation where we have to work with.
Yeah, we basically call up Wells Fargo and they come with guys with shotguns and horses. We're doing it analog so that we're not running the risk of what happened in, for instance, as close as Naples.
Yeah, right.
We do send obviously our debt service, you saw it's $2 million, and they do require a wire, so those are the only exception we do. And of course, we have a long-standing contractual relationship with that financial institution, so that's a little different. We're, vendors are never paid electronically or things of that nature. The benefit of this, the financial software upgrade, is it's gonna allow it'll be web-based, but what it'll help us do is we'll be, be able to remote in from anywhere. So very resilient. If we can't be here for a storm, we have to be off-site, everyone can get in. And that's not just finance. Public Works, all the different departments, they use that. They look in there. Who do we pay? What do we have left on this contract? What do we do? So it's really going to help us just streamline it, make it more powerful. And the one thing that's going to save a lot of departments a lot of work is online invoice approval. And we hope to step up some of our other online documentation that'll really help the employees, all department to be able to see everything. They can see a lot now, but online approvals will be so wonderful because if people can't be in their office, they could do it on the phone. They can this even has an app where they could be in a meeting and on their phone pull up the finance software and see who they paid, what do they have left on that contract. What a powerful tool, instead of having to interrupt a meeting, what do we have left, where are we at on that? I mean, I just think it's going to the next level, and it's going to help make our staff's life so easy. So we're just really excited about it. And the web-based, easier. And the web-based is just where we need to be. Because if something should happen in this building with the servers, we've got the generator, all that, we just don't need that kind of exposure. Our IT need to be focusing on other things, not maintaining finance accounting software. I mean, so we get the professionals to do that, and the web-based is the way to go, I believe.
Thank you. I'd like to present to council an idea that as part of the planning for next year, we make an assessment of where Bonita Springs stands in comparison to other cities with respect to broadband and cell service. And the reason I bring this up, I had a couple of interesting conversations. One, with people that monitor the willingness of people to work from home and are reliant upon good broadband connectivity in order to be able to do that. And it's becoming a bigger demand. There's a lot of people that are moving to Florida that are looking for places to live where, the only requirement is they have access to an international airport. They can be working for a company in New York, they can be working for a company in Chicago. Those companies are reaching out across the country, recruiting people. I know in Bonita Bay, for example, we are getting more and more executives from New York, Chicago, Detroit, moving in full-time to Bonita Bay and living, because all they really need is access to an airport. And they can work from home. I think we need to do an assessment of how Bonita Springs stands up. I got some information earlier that Collier County has gone ahead and started having 4G and 4G LTE put out by the carriers into North Collier County. somehow they have convinced them that that's the place where they need to invest now. I'm not sure I know the difference of what the situation is in North Collier County as opposed to South Lee County. But it seems like they're getting an upgrade to their cell service, and I know those of us that use cell phones, the reliability of those cell phone connections varies quite a bit all over the place. Second thing is, I had a conversation with some people from New Horizons, and I was asking them about the internet connectivity within Rosemary Park and that area. And they told me an interesting story is that, you know, the kids that go to middle school and high school were issued Chromebooks, Chrome computer books, about 4 years ago, starting 4 years ago. And almost all their class assignments, all their reading materials, all their projects are carried out on those Chromebooks. New Horizons has that after-school program, and they monitor what's going on with the kids, and what they have found out is that there's a lot of homes that don't have connectivity, such that the kids are going up and sitting on the parking lot at New Horizons, or sitting in their parents' cars at New Horizons, and New Horizons functions as a hotspot so the kids can do their schoolwork. I think part of it reminds me of something that happened about 90 years ago in this country, and that was the electrification of America, where it was decided that we needed to electrify the whole country, which brought about the Grand Coulee Dam, the Hoover Dam, the TVA. And broadband connectivity is, in cell phone service, it's not just a nicety anymore, it's a needed public utility. And I think we need to look at it that way. It's a way that I think we're going to, you know, compete as a city. It's a way that we do economic development. You know, we don't have big office parks, but I think we can compete if we have great technology. So I would just ask that there be approval for the idea of putting a place card in the budget. Staff can work on this. We've had some meetings, but we come up with an approach to evaluate where Bonita Springs stands with respect to connectivity, what we need to do to improve things. And I just think it's an important thing that we could do for the residents of our community and for the school kids and for people that want to move into this area. So that would be my comment.
Amy?
I had a question about this line item, which is the highway monument along I-75, and there's like an increase of 300,000. So, do we have an actual plan going there? Or what is that
Yeah,
about?
we're about, the next
Is
step
that for the
we're gonna-
CIP?
Yeah,
Okay.
the next step, we're gonna go through the capital improvements
Yeah.
plan, but
Okay.
what we were anticipating is that, just a couple meetings ago, maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago, we approved the scope of services to create a master plan. So we're anticipating some opportunity there to install some improvements, design and move forward with some installation of some monuments and things as we move forward with the master plan for out years.
Okay.
Hey, Laura?
Yes, as Amy pointed out, I also had questions about that, but you mentioned that we could talk, you know, one-on-one with staff.
Yep, and
Okay, but what isn't in is a possibility of building a parking garage. If we bonded it over the Phelps, you know, bioreactor, I just think that we're not focusing enough on infrastructure, and Midtown's coming, so that's the other area that I think that I'd like a little bit of discussion about conveyance of water. I mean, we talk about in so many of these reports, and then we're going to divert water, but to where? And it's not answered. So I'm just kind of curious, but I guess we can go over that. But is a parking garage completely out of the possibility?
Well, that would be a policy decision. What we'd have to do is bring back some estimated costs. I know this, I think there was like 23,000 a space or 20. Or more. It's, at one point in time, it was when 24,000 a space. But if it's something you wanted us to explore, what I think is the first step would be to look at some preliminary design and costs, like a very,
Or maybe an evaluation of need at this point.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, because then it would put an end to a discussion that continually circles around.
It's just not anything we've received direction on, from council at this point, but, probably the first step before you even come up with construction costs, because of
Oh, no, yeah.
time of planning something like that, is maybe just an evaluation of how many parking spots you would need and when. Some type of study.
Let's see. You done? Okay. I think I got Amy here for next.
No, I'm 3.
You done? Okay, Fred?
Yeah, couple comments. I agree with what Laura's saying.
On his
A
schedule.
parking garage, the first thing you gotta do, besides figuring out how many parking spaces, is find out where you need the parking. And I do not believe that down at the bioreactors where you'd want to put it. I think we need a parking garage at some point, but I think you want to have it closer, as close as you can to where the real action requires parking. Because if you have bad weather, then people don't want to walk very far to someplace and all
I
that.
think what Matt was discussing is a
Yeah.
preliminary needs study. So
That
we
would be
have to-
part of
yeah.
it, but
We would
part
just-
of it would be not only how many, but where are the best sites to put it for demand. Second thing on what Chris brought up, I agree with the need, but I think we need a consultant, and we need to have the consultant figure out what do we have to do to get these companies that do this stuff to do it. City should not be in that unless we're gonna start up our own 5G utility company, and I don't think we should.
No, I'm not suggesting that, Fred. I
Okay.
think I agree with you that a consultant's needed.
Oh, yeah, I just want to make sure, I wasn't
yeah.
sure, you didn't say
I
that.
think one of the things that the consultant can do, there's things called heat maps that are available to be given to be worked up, and it will show us a mapping of where our connection problems are and so forth. And the right consultant can do that. So it's gonna take some money, but to at least do the initial assessment.
I think I got Jesse, mister.
Thank you, sir. I would like to say I initially support what you're saying, Chris. There are various parts of the city where cell service is not adequate, and depending how we play this out, how much it costs, and what the funding mechanism is, I think this is probably a pretty good idea.
I appreciate that, Jesse.
As far as the parking garage goes, I said before, I hate parking garages. Honestly, I think that they're one of those things that, they're maybe a necessary evil, but I think, this is one of those things that in time is going to become obsolete due to where technology is going. But with that being said, I disagree a little bit with you on Fred in regards to the bioreactor not being, on the contrary, I think the bioreactor would be the perfect site in the sense that the idea of green infrastructure projects is that you can still functionally use the land, yet simultaneously be advantageous to the environment. So we would be dealing with water, and then on top of that, we'd be dealing with parking, which is our 2 biggest problems. So we're simultaneously dealing with water and on a space that we can't build anyway, and we're giving people a place to park. So I think we should just let Matt run with this and give us the best options, and I think that's probably the best way to go. I just want to say on the record, I think that you're kind of in the right direction with that, Matt, though, so, thanks.
Amy?
I have just a couple comments. In regard to the parking garage, I think it's totally premature at this time. We're in the process of trying to decide what we want to do in the downtown area, which I think will determine the need for a parking garage and the timing for it. I think eventually we'll have a parking garage down there, so I think we should include it in our planning, we don't want to foreclose the ability to have it. In fact, some of the design that has been suggested had the multi-use development around the parking garage, and nobody seemed to like it, so. But I just think it's just too early even to be talking about that. We have so many other decisions to make first. In regard to the access to internet service, I think in the areas where the communities are unable to have internet in the home, I think that's one problem. Having somewhat of a townwide process, again, having been involved with getting high-speed internet into our community, I have an understanding of sort of the things that we're going to have to go through to have that kind of a process. And I want to tell you that there has been approved a 129-foot tower at the corner of Coconut Road and 41 for AT&T is putting in a tower to get better access. And I think we are, and we approved one. I forgot, where do we approve them? By the church?
Way down.
That's by by your place. So you had like a dead spot by Spanish Well. So I think that the companies are somewhat slowly, but not that slowly, putting in these towers so we have better access through town. I think we can do better to just do a heat map. And in fact, there was, in the one that we approved, there was a heat map that showed where there were dead spots. This approval that Estero just did at that corner, which I just mentioned, also had a heat map. So we could just ask to have some understanding of where we have holes in the access, and that would be a beginning start. And then we can encourage these companies to do what they would do normally, which is just put the towers in so they get better service to everybody. But the second problem that Chris brought out, I think we could address in a different way, maybe. But I think we should. That's the one I would want to focus on. But again, we need professionals. That's a very technical issue that you brought up. And I'll just tell you, at Pelican Landing, we did this for 2 years to try to figure out, and we have a contract that worked great for 2 years, and now it's still working great, but it's costing us a lot more money. And because the technology changes so quickly, and we would do the same thing for a city if we committed ourselves to citywide access. I don't think we would be capable of getting a contract that would really work for us over a long period of time.
Okay, I'll chime in here. What's the library doing for us?
Well, that's the other point. They have access there.
That'd be a central location.
Well, they already get access there. They can go there and get.
Well, what's this Wi-Fi and what's this?
They already have it. I mean, that was my other point, is that.
Is 5G or whatever, everything's changing so fast, it's kind of hard to make plans. But, Mike, please.
Yeah, on the parking garage, I think it's a good thing to have money in there for down the road when we decide what's going on and where it needs to be. The cell phone, definitely looking at the heat map. But I was thinking anywhere that there's city property, if we're in a dead area, because I know a lot of times it's just a matter of, is there a tower available for the carriers to get onto? So if we could offer a location for them to go onto, like a lot of times it can go on a building, there's stealth technology to hide the stuff. So like, I know downtown, it's a horrible reception down there. So, I was thinking on the Lyles building, if we could put stealth transmitters on there or something, but definitely look at the heat map just to see where they're needed and if the city can offer help in locating them on properties that we have.
The key to it is going to be, and I was involved in leading the project to put fiber optic into Bonita Bay. The key to it is getting fiber optic run throughout the city. If we can figure a way to increase the amount of fiber optic running down our major roadways, there are ways that we can improve connectivity into places like Rosemary Park, and that won't require building of towers. But that's where we need the consultants. That's why we need to start this project. This is not gonna be something that's gonna be done in 6 months. It's gonna be something that we first need to get started in terms of analyzing where things stand and coming up with a plan of how we're gonna evaluate things and what we need to do to go forward and make things better.
Well, and
Okay, now I've got Derek Rooney up here.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to do is take a break. We're getting bogged down here, not going anywhere. So let's take a 10-minute break.
Mind
thought
if
we were
I
almost
might, I might
done.
just try to help you set the tone for when you come back, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. Just to be sure, we're not making any decisions today, and I think I tend to agree, we are getting way into details. The two requests that I heard, just to make sure that we have it for staff for the next meeting, would be set aside some money, earmark some money for a study of our, I heard basically internet infrastructure, so everything from fiber to cell phone, things like that. And also some money to do a study of the downtown parking. Now, neither of those assume anything, they just tell you what the issues may be. It may be, in fact, that the study for downtown parking says you need a little bit more surface parking. But, so this is we're still in a budget framework here, so it's about setting aside money to look, and then how we select that money and how it's used to come back with a study. That's discussions that you'll have more conversation on how to direct that after the budget's been adopted. So I just want to make sure that we get direction on at least those two items and any other items when you come back.
between the
I call this meeting back to order. I've got Derek who's taken care of. Laura, but she's not here. Okay, anybody else want to speak right now?
Thank you, Mayor. So if you're ready, we'll move on to the preliminary capital improvement plan.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn it over to Matt just to highlight a couple of the water projects and the transportation projects.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Arlene had mentioned, our capital improvement plan is grouped and organized by the City Council's strategic priorities. So the first projects you'll see are really addressing stormwater management in a couple of different ways. It was touched on earlier in the meeting about physical environment. That's where these projects are really coming from, the physical environment projects in this first grouping under stormwater. In stormwater, we really have two things we're trying to address. One is flood mitigation as best we can. So there's some very high dollar projects that we were successful with grant funds for that are from previous years in the budget that are now moving towards design and construction. I just want to point out a few of those hallmark ones. The Quinn Down Dean Neighborhood Buyout Program. Ellie McEwen's been working diligently on that. We received $5 million. We're looking to fund an additional $1 million, and we continue to seek grants to buy additional homes in that area because of the severity of the flooding that's been experienced year in and year out.
Are we finding cooperation? Are people?
We have.
I erased your number here.
I thought I was pushed, you see. Okay, I'm sorry.
We do have a group of folks that are working through this program. The funding has some income requirement restrictions and eligibility restrictions, but yes, we do have cooperation. I think, as we move into this fiscal year, we'll be starting to buy the first homes with that program and then looking to leverage our dollars for less restrictive programs and funding as well.
And we also, as you recall, we asked the Florida legislature for some funding. We understand that was vetoed by the governor, but we've heard from Senator Pasadoma that they're going to move it to a different program funding. And up at your next coming meeting, you're going to have a legislative update. We're going to continue to request that same legislative ask and go through that with you as well.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm just going to touch on some of the keynote ones. Right now I'm talking about flood mitigation projects, and then I'll go into the other component with stormwater. We have the Spring Creek Golf Course project, which you did receive a presentation from our engineer on, a month ago. We continue to work. We actually met with Baron Collier companies. They're sharing their information with our designer right now, so we're advancing the project to bring back a design concept for council, and we'll move forward with that portion of the project. We just advertised for engineering on another large infrastructure project in the Quinn Down Dean Imperial neighborhood. That's an $11 million project. We have $750,000 from the legislature and about $10 million from the federal government. So we're soliciting designers. That solicitation is out. We've finally been authorized to do that. The federal strings kind of have slowed our process down a bit, but you will be talking about that in the upcoming year. And a new one that we touched on at our grant program was the Citrus Park Drainage Project. We've executed a design contract on that, and we're working with the designer to come up with concepts. And so in the coming year, you'll start to see designs coming back, conceptual.
Making progress.
The other arena that stormwater management / physical environment really is applied to is in the water realm is water quality. So I talked about the bioreactor phase 2 project. That is a water quality project. It is under construction. The construction's kind of in fits and spurts and really not all that exciting to see at this point, but some of the key components are already in. The pipe connection from the Imperial River to the Feltz Avenue site is in. The intake structure is in, a 14-foot deep wet well's in, but that project will wrap up as we come through to the fall of this year, and then we'll be testing it.
Well, what kind of volume is going to go through this? I mean, how big a difference is it really going to make?
Oh, it has a chance to make quite a difference. It's a 10-inch pipe, 500 gallons a minute, with the potential for let's say 22 hours a day treatment through the capability of about 500,000 gallons a day. I think if I did my math.
Through here and the wood chips grab the nitrogen and the way it goes.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing.
Have we solved the oxygen problem?
Yes. So the phase 2 has it has a couple of things. We have some new ideas that are being applied on the front end. We'll see whether those concepts prove or not. 2 different technologies. And then on the back end, this process does rob water of dissolved oxygen. So we've introduced a mechanism that will introduce oxygen into the water that's returning to the river.
Thank you.
The other water quality project, which is really kind of a water quality, habitat restoration, and flood control project. It's a unique one, is the Pine Lake Preserve. We received grant funding. It is 95% complete construction-wise. We were waiting on the rain. The rain took a while to come to do the plantings. So there's some littoral shelf plantings, some aquatic plants, and some planting on a berm that's already been constructed. But all of the hard infrastructure has been constructed, so that's good news. And the planting should start a little later on this month, and that project will be complete.
Very good.
Fabulous.
Okay, so that kind of are the keynote stormwater capital improvement projects. I'm going to move on to the strategic priority number 2, which is transportation, and just highlight a few new things and a few old things and give you some pulse points. So the first one is the Bonita Beach Road Quadrant. We have a large amount of money set aside for that. We have been in negotiations with really with the Northwest property owner who we
I'm
entered
sorry,
in.
where are we now? Which one?
Transportation.
It's on page 57,
Okay.
and it is the second to last line item from the bottom.
Mhm.
So we entered into a settlement agreement with the property owner kind of behind the Publix shopping center. And Derek and myself have been working through the appraisal process, and we're working through the structure of that agreement to ultimately to acquire the right-of-way behind Publix. I'm hopeful that
Yeah, Matt and I agree on one thing, that if it's successful, we did it, and if it's not successful, the other one of us. That's the one thing we've agreed on. But yes, we're moving closer to getting that right of way and being able to have that quadrant.
So I'm sure there will be decision points as we come into this year, this coming fiscal year on that item. Moving on, we have the Goodwin Street Sidewalk and Drainage Project. That is a full reconstruction of Goodwin Street, just north. It's the northern edge of Bamboo property. It goes all the way to Matheson Street. It will require right-of-way acquisition, so this is a lengthy project. An engineering firm has been recommended by a city selection committee, and that'll be back to you at the next meeting in July for consideration to move forward with a design firm. So, assuming council takes that action, we'll be working on the design in large part this coming year. In addition, we'd had a request for a sidewalk on the south side of West Terry Street.
Can I just say, so does that have anything to do with then the one that you just talked about, the buyout neighborhood?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So, in addition, there's another project that's been in the CIP the last 2 years, which is a sidewalk component to the south side of West Terry, where the large multi-use path has been constructed, really from 41 to Old 41. And that project, again, would require right-of-way acquisition and enclosed drainage to construct a sidewalk there, but it's been in our budget, and now it would be moving into design selection. So we'll be looking to select a designer in the upcoming year and start on the design and right-of-way acquisition process there as well.
So we're at the 10 million, right, you're at
I've jumped around a little bit, I apologize. I'm on page 58. I'm on the second line item. And I'm moving to,
Just to clarify, one thing I want to make sure that's got is the Sun Trail. I know we put 5 million. I just want to remind the council that we participated with Collier County, the Village of Estero, and Lee County on some preliminary survey work. So that's why it's a little bit reduced from the 5 million. That was our cost share within that program.
so now I'm moving to page 59. And I'm going to talk about the very first item, which was a sidewalk project council had moved forward, the Imperial Shores Boulevard sidewalk. It connects Tarpon Avenue to Bonita Beach Road. It is a well-traveled corridor by folks going to the American Legion, as well as people that are walking to the beach.
7-Eleven.
It has some significant challenges. We coordinated with Bonita Springs Utilities. The design is complete, so we have complete construction plans ready. The estimate is $1.3 million, so we've advanced that. BSU has done some significant utility relocation design work as well, so we're ready to move forward to construction this coming year. I do want to caution you, this is an extensive project. It's an 8-foot wide sidewalk on the east side of the roadway. It encloses most all of the drainage ditches there and moves into people's, the right-of-way that their driveways enter. It's a large project. It has large drainage pipes, and it very well could come in a little higher than the engineer's estimate. But that's what we put in the budget. It'll depend on what the economy.
303, the Legion, that'll go in front of the Legion there.
Yes, and there is some coordination we need to do with the Legion for some temporary construction easements. That's the one place where the project needed.
And the 8-foot is necessary? It can't be 6 foot?
There's really no room to build a sidewalk on the west side of the road because of the way the canals address the roadway and the home. So really, wherever we can, we build the widest that we can.
Right.
Particularly if you've driven that corridor, there is a lot of foot traffic at all hours of the day.
Yes.
So I was gonna, let's see, I pointed out West Terry South. A new addition, 2 new additions. One is the Old 41 Bonita Beach Road quadrant. This would be for a quadrant roadway at the southern intersection of Bonita Beach Road and Old 41. We had worked with the landowner to the east during some recent rezonings to protect a corridor through there to connect to Racetrack Road from Old 41 to alleviate some traffic congestion and future traffic congestion. There is currently an FDOT PD&E study that has looked at the planning work that we have done and we'll be presenting here in the fall that will show some basically endorsements of those ideas. So it's the appropriate time to start budgeting for land acquisition as well as construction in the follow-on years. And then finally, we've had a request for Rosemary Drive. We just finished Bonita Drive. We just installed the flashing crosswalks here this week. But Bonita Drive is an east-west road with an 8-foot sidewalk and landscaping. Rosemary, if you're not familiar with the area, is the other street that services that neighborhood. It is a large east-west corridor, and we have chronic issues with the pavement, with potholes. The pavement is a little thin there, but it's really lacking adequate. It has a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road, but for the volume of folks that travel that corridor daily, it really needs more robust pedestrian facilities. Probably on the order of what we did in Bonita Drive on both sides if we can. So this is contemplation of full road reconstruction, drainage installation, and pedestrian byways both on the north and south side. Yes, ma'am.
In light of the discussion we had earlier, could we think about putting, what are those,
Yes, to answer your question,
what is that called? The
fiber optic.
Fiber optic up there. If you're going to redo the road, should we get some input, engineering input in regard to putting fiber optic up there?
Both this project, this would be moving into design selection, similar to Goodwin Street, has just moved or is moving out of. Both this project and Goodwin Street are probably prime candidates for consideration of that because they are going to be full road reconstruction project should council move this forward.
And even though it's expensive to do that, it's a lot less expensive if you're already digging up the road.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I think that really kind of covers the highlights in both of those areas. Those are pretty significant projects. We look forward to advancing them. And
Well, when I read through this,
Yes.
I see traffic calming. And I was wondering, what exactly defines traffic calming? And actually, I found it later on.
there are several
Roundabouts.
There are several things that address traffic calming. Roundabouts is one of them. Speed tables is another. And we have two projects potentially that could utilize those funds. One is we did some analysis of the Terry Street roundabout, and we have a report coming back from, actually it happens to be the same engineering firm, for some improvements to the crosswalks and to the striping that would require, some relatively significant dollars to do. So, the funds here are anticipatory of that. I will have them come back to council here, shortly to give those presentation. In addition, they had studied the Pennsylvania corridor and they already have some recommendations in kind of a phased approach. We did install some stop signs as a temporary measure, but they have some things to augment that, and primarily what they are is speed tables. So that's a big idea for the city, but that's what that line item is there to cover, is those two items.
The speed tables on Terry Street
On
are
Pencil,
they're not what they thought they were gonna be.
the speed tables on Terry Street are not speed tables. When it was originally designed, they were to be speed tables, but council really wasn't comfortable with that along Terry Street, and so we ended up with a stamped concrete crosswalk. But this would be a recommendation of speed tables in a couple of locations along Pennsylvania.
And the fire department has a problem with them?
With speed bumps, most certainly, speed tables, as long as they're designed correctly, I believe we are able to work with them on that.
Okay, good.
Well, I'm still on speaker list. So, what about the signs that tell you how fast you're going? I think they work.
So we have two of those are called stalkers. that are
How lovely.
utilized by the Lee County Sheriff's Office. So we purchase them as equipment, and then they also can do traffic reports so that you can determine if speeding's happening. But they also have resources to additional ones should we need them. But we do have two mobile ones that are under the city that purchased for utilization by the Sheriff's Office. And they use them based on complaints received by the Sheriff's Office and the city where there's a need to address that.
Okay, so I know there's been complaints on Mangrove, but in my own community, they want to put in speed bumps, and I'm thinking, if they just put in the signs, would they work? So temporarily, if they were to borrow the signs and then assess if people then realized, oh my gosh, I'm going 35 instead of 25, and you didn't realize it, you then immediately slow down. I use auto control, so.
That might be a conversation for the HOA to have with the Sheriff's Office, because they do separate detail patrols for neighborhoods. They can do it as warnings and they can do it as tickets. It depends on, they can contract directly with them for some guidance in the private HOAs. The purchase we have is for the city streets, but there's probably.
Can we get a discounted for like private streets from the city?
I think you can have a conversation with the Sheriff's Office and see
Okay.
what opportunities are available for. I know a lot of HOAs contract with them directly and then have
Perfect.
detailed officers help give out warnings or information or provide the speed monitor if they need it.
Thank you.
Just two on the environmental protection, just to outline for you. One is for planning purposes, as we continue to have an opportunity to sort of have a savings account bank for opportunities for environmentally sensitive lands. And this was discussed previously, that if an opportunity arrives, whether that be a lot need for an individual inland lot or property in the DRG, or there would be an account that you could utilize for those needs, or on the beach as well. And then the other is the resolution that we have that reserves $110,000 each year, so that when we become eligible for the beach renourishment with Lee County, that's accounted for as well.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like Nicole to come up and give you.
I just have a question about the beach renourishment. Is that enough?
We think it is. I mean, these projects are managed by Lee County Natural Resources through an interlocal agreement with us. And, you know, they haven't signaled otherwise. They take many years to get permitted. And quite frankly, they do an incredible job working with the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEP. So I think if it's not enough, you know, we need to have that dialogue. And quite honestly, I haven't had it in a year with them. But, you know, we've been holding that number, and thus far it has been enough. So, you know, it's probably something we should revisit with them.
Do we have like a potential time frame for when they might do that?
We do, and I don't know it off the top of my head. I would
I'm
need to
asking
check.
because in my community, you know, we have our beach and we have to do it ourselves. And we haven't put aside enough, and it's coming sooner rather than later. I don't know if that's the same case.
There is, and I would need to speak with some folks, but there is an ongoing inlet management study that's going on in Estero Bay that kind of rethinks how they manage sand. And I don't know, you know, whether it'll play into the timing, but it essentially is trying to develop a more routine basis. But they've been on a pretty routine basis, quite honestly.
Thanks for the input.
And my question was, the Kuiper the Kuiper Reserve, is there any way that we could build like water storage there?
The Kuiper Preserve. So that's a Lee County 2020 property.
Right.
It would be a conversation we'd have to have with Lee County on their thoughts. I do believe some projects in the South Lee Watershed Master Plan study that they're getting ready to unroll, look at some opportunities there.
Okay.
They
Great.
did a watershed study that included that concept on the Kuiper Preserve, the county, and They recently have selected a team to work out the design of Kuiper Preserve, and they have one of our stormwater engineers on it. So I think that they are probably cognizant of that, but we can talk to them.
Great, thank you.
And just
Hi,
before,
Nicole.
before Nicole starts, I was gonna, I know, Amy, you had a question about the highway monument and the urban design. What we did is, recently, when we approved that scope of services to come up with ideas citywide of what we want our signage and branding to appear, we wanted to build in some funding opportunity, because we do know, number one is, we're at end of life on the signages by the beaches. Those are falling apart. We had a sign that we had to take out in the downtown that was by Buffalo Chips. We've never had new welcome signs on Logan coming from Collier. We also don't have welcome sign coming from Collier off of Imperial Parkway, or on the north end coming in from Estero. So we wanted to have some ability, cost-wise, to have some build-up for when we come up with a design.
I remember that part of it, but I just wondered if we had something specific going for the interchange there. Because at one time, we had this kind of fun
We did, but
concept there.
I think what we need to do is explore that more with council to see what you want and where you want it, because we had done previously some opportunities for either partnerships we could have. I think one was BSU's property that was near the interchange, was further north. It was sort of near the Terry Street Bridge. We had talked about a piece of property that was closer to Hunter's Ridge neighborhood. It was south of the interchange. So we'd have to revisit some of that and see what's possible. But also, when DPZ did their studio workshop here, they had some design work they did, and we're looking at some vacant parcels. Some of them we may not have access to because they're private property, but they looked at some ideas as well.
Thank you.
That would be part of the planning process we bring back.
Okay, Nicole, what page are you gonna be on? then?
She's gonna have her PowerPoint for you.
It's in
PowerPoint?
front of you.
But park projects are under community aesthetics, which is your 5th strategic priority. So those are where the park projects will come in
Page
under.
60.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. But I also have a PowerPoint. You all have a copy of it as well, just so we can kind of follow along. All of them you have seen before. I just wanted to reiterate, now we're into where we're putting funds to construct these projects. So most of them are already planned, but not all. So we will go through them. So I have a list of the bigger projects that I'm going to go through. The first one being the skate park and pump track. Oops, sorry about that. As you know, this one has been fully designed, permitted. We were awarded the grant in May, and that has already been signed, sent back to the state. Now we're in the point of, they do have specific required documentation, and we're in the process of obtaining those things in order to receive our notice of commencement from them. As soon as we receive that notice of commencement from them, then we'll go out to bid for the project for construction. Our bid documents are fully complete. We're waiting on a couple of answers from them on some requirements that they would like put in the bid documents that are beyond what our procurement process is. So as soon as we get those, we are hoping to have that information. We are kind of waiting on some information as a title search and boundary survey, things like that, that we're in the process of obtaining to send to them. And once we receive that, we'll get our notice of commencement.
Very good.
So here are just some pictures. So to jog your memory of what it looks like, this is attached to the recreation center in the same location as the former skate park, just this one was fully planned and designed with the Action Sports Division in Austin, Texas for Stantec, as well as the skate park community members. We did hold public workshops, and they were fully involved in the process of design. So these are just the features, and they picked out the features. So that was also a plus, that the community has a huge hand in the design of this. And that's just the layout and the grades and things like that. Next, so you're fully aware, the skate park is also within the Bonita Springs Community Park, the community pool, the baseball complex. This is our largest city park at almost 40 acres. So we do have several amenities in this park, which most of the projects you'll see on this list are in that park this upcoming year. So the next one is the community pool project. This was approved recently in actually June 2nd, your June 2nd council meeting for updated design from our team of Stantec is the principal, but we also have an engineering firm of ABB, as well as Shingle Schultz as architecture, and Odd AU for the actual aquatic pool portion. So here's the design that you did see in April. So where we're at this point is there have been many changes in pool codes. So we are having to update because this was a 2016 plan that we shelved. So we are having to update all of that information. But we are looking at keeping it the same as we stated before with the zero entry. The beginning portion would be the splash pad, then you go into the 18 inches of water, and then a little bit deeper water depending on where the outlays fall of the slides for the play structure. And then this is just a different view of the zero entry pool and as you go into it.
Are those real trees?
No, those trees actually are features. They're water features, so they do spray water. So everything involved in this is a water feature. It has spray cannons. The trees have water that comes down. There are buckets that periodically fall, water cannons. It's a whole complete, it's basically a playground in water.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So this is just another view, so you see kind of how the play structure is in deeper water, and then we do have a zero entry. And this is just a close-up of different water features for different age groups. So we do start out with a zero entry for the small children, toddlers, and then the bigger kids. And I know this is a little hard to read, but it does include the family restroom facility, which is something that we needed to build regardless if we were doing the pool. But this was already in the plan for the pool addition as well. On top of this, we have ADA requirements that we'll be looking at for our current facility, as well as our parking lot facility will need to be updated with ADA. So that is included in the budget. And I believe this may be on page 61. Sorry if I'm bouncing around. Yes, it's on page 61. Under Children's Activity Pool and Family Restroom. Next, we're on to phase 2 of the Community Park Baseball Complex. So we did get the go-ahead to hire Waldrop Engineering for phase 2 of this project in March of this year. So phase 2 includes, we found out with phase 1 a couple of issues that we have that we needed to go right into phase 2 to make the fields more accessible, as well as improve the functionality. So this does require the fields 1, 2, and 4 to be completely redone. Field 3 was already redone by a grant from the Minnesota Twins, as well as city funding. We completed all the corridor ADA compliance, but now we're on to all the fields. So you'll see the shaded area. Inside, you'll kind of see a little bit of, this is overlaid on top of the park, so that you can see the middle corridor is what we just did for ADA compliance with the brick pavers and the landscaping and the concrete. Here are the phase 2 project limits, which is the green, as well as you can see here a little bit better, the brown is what we did in phase 1. So here are some pictures of what depicts phase 2. So this is what the new pedestrian walkway, currently the structures aren't there, the building is in the background, but the dugouts and the structures are not, just the brick paver walkway right now and the concrete on either side. So this is what the new dugout would look like, as well as you can see, all fields will have new fencing. So it will be the black vinyl coated fencing, and that will also be incorporated into the dugouts and spectator areas. Here's a spectator area with ADA compliant bleachers, as well as aerial views so that you see the shade structures do have metal roofs. And then we have new scorekeeper areas that are actually covered from the sun because it is really hot for the scorekeepers to just be in the blazing sun, as well as the backstop fencing. So that funding is on page, I believe that is on page 60. Sorry if I'm bouncing around here. Next, we have what's called the West Terry Street Palm Avenue Pocket Park. This is a project that's pulling off of something that Matt and Public Works Department is already doing, which you will see. Well, here's the street view of the property itself. This is at the corner of West Terry and Palm. This is currently a regular bus stop, but it is also a school bus stop as well, right on that corner. So what we are looking at doing, Public Works is doing the front portion, which is the sidewalk and the landscaping, as well as the benches, sorry, yes, thank you. As well as, but Matt, do you want to explain kind of how the sidewalk goes?
So in the top picture there, where the lady's jogging, the sidewalk will basically diverge away from West Terry, which is the road, and kind of come up behind the bus stop to where that paver brick circle is, and then it essentially then diverges back. I don't know if you can see the red sign, little bus sign. It'll come back towards the roadway there because you're approaching the Pine intersection. The city owns that lot. This is part of the West Terry Street path project. We have the pre-construction meeting for what you see here, as well as the rest of it tomorrow. So that will be built this summer. And then, we saw an opportunity with Nicole and the Art and Public Places Board, and I'll let her kind of explain to capitalize on what we're going to build and expand upon it.
So what the portion that Matt is doing, as you can see, I'll go back here. Here's the bus stop. So the portion that he is doing goes just behind the bus stop. This property actually goes further back to a fence line of a house, a neighborhood. So what we are doing is kind of jumping in on Matt's project and proposing that we go ahead and add on an additional 12,000 square feet of sod, as well as fully irrigate this property. So adding sod, irrigation, cleaning up the site with additional landscaping and trees, and making this a pocket park. The Art and Public Places Board has voted to add a sculpture to this park as well that depicts families. So that will be something that will come back to you at a later time for approval, but that is what we are looking at. The additional funding that Arlene was mentioning, this pocket park for design, at this point, we're just looking to fully irrigate it, lay the sod, put in the sculpture, and then other features may be added at a different time. But this will just complete that full property on the corner as being completely landscaped and fully sodded and irrigated.
Clean up the neighborhood.
Beautiful.
Make it look nicer.
Yes, it will look really nice, yes. Yep, and so we're just jumping on a project that Public Works was doing. Next. And we will be, of course, using the same, I actually have their full plan here. We are following suit with the types of landscaping and sod and things that they're doing, so it's gonna match up. Next, we are looking at the Depot Park Natural Playground. We've had interest in expanding this playground, in making it similar to, well, keeping what we have. We do have some funds in operating to put in a few things, update the shell sidewalks as well, or the shell paths, the gravel paths, the sand, clean up some of the areas, add additional benches and seating. But what we're also looking at is adding additional features to this, so that right now it's really only for small children. So we would be looking at adding similar features, and I just say possible because we are looking at design. The funds we have in next year's budget are for design, to add something similar to, this is the community park playground that we have, which is very well used and does have features for older kids as well as younger. And so this is just some possible expansion features onto the natural playground so that it can be used by more than just small children. So it can be used for children of all ages. As well as Depot already has restrooms and things like that. So it would just make this a more well-rounded play area for kids. And then we also wanted to,
Yes, Laura, just a
I
second.
did.
yes,
But is this what the parents would like? Because, you know, there's an age difference when you're 12 and then when you're 15 and what you're doing.
none of this, our playgrounds go up to age 12. Most play structures are the next stage up. We have a toddler structure on the site now, which
Oh, and that's
only-
it?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
This would be the 5 to 12 age
Okay.
group structure.
Okay. So you're not adding,
No. This would just be adding features for children 12 and under versus smaller children. And this would be an addition. We wouldn't be taking away the toddler
no,
section.
right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have, actually in Island Park, we already have outdoor fitness stations and things like that, which would be for older kids. So you just go over the bridge and you have older kids. And then lastly on our list, this is a topic that's been brought up several times this evening. This is the Mosaic Oak Creek kayak launch. Here are some pictures that depict some issues that we do have. The one on the left is the current launch. That is as you're getting on the launch. So as you see, that is a very sharp in decline to get down to the area. So technically it's ADA compliant, but it is not built how our current Riverside Park ADA compliant launch is. So we would be looking at a better transition, as you can see on the right. This is a Moby mat, which they use on the beaches, but underneath it is gravel. So it isn't the most stable. So we are looking at having this designed completely different as a concrete or asphalt path leading to an ADA compliant launch.
And in the future, we're going to be referring to this facility as the Oak Creek Kayak Launch.
Correct. Yes.
But the current launch should be, you're on your own. Good luck.
That's why I
Wow.
have listed here as Oak Creek Kayak Launch. But just for reference, we use Mosaic so you understand what we're talking about. As well as we will be looking at, currently there is not an ADA parking spot for this location. So we do need to make some changes to the parking area as well. So those are things that we'll be looking at for this park, as well as the things on the continuing budget that Arlene had mentioned. Those are just normal operating things that we have at our park, such as trash cans and signage directing people to where to go to get to the launch and things like that, because there currently isn't roadway signage. And though I just highlighted the big ones, I don't know if you have questions on any other specific smaller projects that we have, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, the thermo heater for the pool.
Mm-hmm.
that in, or is
It is in, that is in the current budget for this year. What we are looking at is when we go out to bid for the whole pool project, that's when we will make these bid alternates, so they will be bid at the same time, so that we're only tearing up the area once and not at separate times. So we're gonna do it as one project, but they are separate line items.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
I have a question, just a
Amy?
comment. I just have a comment. I want to, first of all, thank you for progressing all these projects, because we've had, as, I know it's our 5th objective, and I think it was once our 6th objective, was to develop and implement what we called urban design in our parks, and I think we are going a long way in doing that, and I can't wait to have these projects finished. So I think you've done a great job, and keep up the good work, and let's keep it moving.
Great.
But thank you for the effort.
Absolutely, thank you.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Is that it? Thank you, thank you, Nicole.
The last items I'd like to just kind of address, if Laura will come forward, these are our sort of capital expenditures other that are necessary for function of government, but technically don't fall into one of strategic priority, but are necessary in our functions.
On
Laura
page
Taylor,
61?
Director of
Page 62, page 62.
62, okay.
So the first item you'll see is technology equipment replacements and upgrades. Then we have our on-site backups for critical server data. This copies backups to a secondary location for added protection and provides immediate access to data. Then we have, as Arlene mentioned earlier, the assessments for city facilities to be sure that they are meeting current building code standards, ADA standards, security standards. This will allow us to develop a plan for our facility improvements. And then we've been made aware of some significant issues with the current City Hall generator. I believe that you all are aware of that as well. What you'll see in the budget today is that we put in a budget item for a full replacement, but we are still gathering options to remedy the issues. So we'll bring that back to you at a different date. And then we have, so there's cracking in the second row parking by the entrance to City Hall. I don't know if you've seen that out in the parking lot, but it is the sewer lateral, and that's evidence that it's failing in the parking area. We will need to dig that up to fix it. So we budgeted for an entire overlay of the parking lot, as this repair will require the asphalt work. And then the last few items, the Lyles Hotel roof replacement and stucco repairs, as well as the Lyles Hotel security cameras.
But part of the assessment we're looking at is each facility we're looking at total security, so there probably will be greater these are just minimum stop gaps, but we'll probably, once we have the actual assessment results, be asking for, additional cameras and security, additional technology as well. We've talked about having it so that they're available on our phones so that we can easily upload them to the sheriff's office. And then there are some making sure the parking lots are fully camera oriented as well, so.
And then for the assessments, we just think it'd be a really good idea for us, because for our IT equipment, we do a 5-year assessment for that. Every 5 years or so, we'll be looking at our IT infrastructure. So we're gonna wrap that into the city facilities as well to help us develop a plan and timelines to bring to you for the facilities.
And then each facility will be looking at total infrastructure as life of the roof, life of the air conditioning, whether or not we should recommend hardening of it, such as a generator or other storm preparedness, so it could be used as other options depending on where the facility is. And this is also going to include, as we receive the direction from you all, this will also include assessment of the old library too.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
It will also, as you gave us the direction this evening, we'll also be looking at the old library as well in that assessment.
Very good, yes.
My question, I did, but Chris is before me. Oh, okay. When you repave the parking lot to entrance to City Hall, are we gonna still be delayed from coming in? Do we have to go to the rec center to pick up our mail?
We'll be looking at that after October 1. as the-
October 1, October 1?
Well, the budget will be set in October 1, so we'll be looking for that in the next fiscal year. It should not, we'll plan, so it won't delay any
Yeah,
meetings.
we'll already be in the facility. We'll probably plan it on construction of like when we have 3 weeks in between meetings. We'll try to do it so that we schedule it so it's not between city council meetings. Sometimes you have a third Wednesday in the month that we watch for to try to get things done then.
That shouldn't delay this any further, not this project.
And
Chris, did you have something?
No, I don't know. I probably picked my mistake.
I just had one for there were pranks that were done by kids. They tagged the bridge, and then other kids went and did monkey bars on the band. Did we ever identify them? Are there any consequences for those activities?
So all of that was reported to the sheriff's office, but in the best case scenarios, if folks can alert the city first, we can clean it up as quickly as we can, and then we work with the sheriff's office on that as well. We try not to bring too much attention to it because that only sometimes encourages that behavior.
Well, but consequences, no, I'm talking about, are there any consequences if you identify the punks who did it? Can
Sure.
we?
Of course, that's the sheriff's department's job. Jeez. Can we move on?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, are you about done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's all we have to present in the capital improvement plan. And if there's any other items you'd like us to address, we can also meet with you one-on-one, or if there's things you'd like us to consider to be added on.
Are we gonna go around again, or is this our last?
So that's what we did build into this agenda for you to have discussions with us to any council comments.
We're ready for.
Push a button.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Jesse.
Thank you, sir. Number one, I just wanted to just kind of remind everybody, I'll talk to staff, so I'm not saying necessarily I'll bring something back, but y'all remember a number of meetings ago when we discussed, just from an appearance standpoint, Bonita Beach Road and Terry, where you can see the gravesite on Beach Road pulling in. And it turns out we met with the church that owns it, and at the time, which was a number of months ago, they had said that they were going to look into the possibility of being able to come up with some funds for potential joint beautification project to essentially make it so that you aren't driving down Beach Road as soon as you get off on exit 116 and you see a graveyard. So I don't know exactly if it would be a natural buffer or something to make it look better in that intersection, but I'm gonna get back with staff and the church and see if they have money and any plans to do anything with it. And then the other one.
And to clarify, you were talking about the right-of-way. We would coordinate with Lee County as well.
Yes.
Right.
So on Terry and 41.
Imperial.
I'm sorry, Imperial and 41, I'm sorry.
Imperial Parkway and Bonita Beach Road.
Remember the old Albertsons?
Yeah.
What's there?
So the graveyard is there, like right on 40. So if you're driving down Beach Road from 16, from 116 on the south side of the road, you'll see a graveyard.
Well, my objection there is the billboard. It's not the
Well,
graveyard.
no, that's the second phase. No, that's completely
I
included.
think the graveyard is fine, you know.
What I would like to do strategically is, first of all, address dealing with making that intersection look better by doing the graveyard, and then the second component is the right-of-way sign, which we've initially talked to the county about a long time ago, but problem is with that, they own it. So then we would have to beg, borrow, or steal a situation whereby they would let us take that down in conjunction with beautification of that intersection, but then they want it up somewhere else. So that's kind of, you have to move it, you don't get to just take it down.
Exactly.
So that's kind of.
It's $1 million too.
Yeah, so, first step of that is I think we see if they have money, and if they do, then we figure out what it might cost us to put something up around there to at least make it look more aesthetically pleasing, since it's literally the road that people, when they come to Bonita Beach Road, a quarter mile into our city, the first thing they see is a gravesite and a billboard. That's just not a good look.
It's a great big sign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that too, I think that needs to go too.
I don't know.
I don't think the graveyard, well, anyway, we could
Okay.
discuss it.
So, and then number two, I did meet with Captain Lee, regarding LCSO and, potential law enforcement needs, as we discussed last budget season. And he is gonna come on the 21st and kind of go over those holistically with us and kind of talk about population growth and, you know, level of service and things along those lines. So I'll anticipate, you know, a good discussion on that on the 21st. So that's all I have, but I just wanted to bring both of those up. They're not on here now, but I just wanted to remind everybody those were things we were working on. And if it's appropriate, it may come back up, but if not, you know, we'll at least talk to staff on those. So. That's it from me.
Okay, anybody else want to chime in here, or are we ready to go home? Mayor and city council report, is that where we're at?
Yes.
Okay, well, I feel I got a evaluation form for our city manager, whose contract runs out 1st of October. We've had a fruitful discussion. I don't know whether how do we handle this?
Previously, I did discuss with the previous mayor, and the mayor currently has asked me to talk about my current contract with him. He's discussed offering me 4 years as a contract, and he discussed, I don't know if you, increasing the budget a little bit, about $5,000 in this year, and then he looked at a potential increase yearly of a 2% for the contract.
Do you know what that looks like in comparison to your counterparts in the cities surrounding us?
Well, this is where we came up with, that she's underpaid compared to the neighbors. And she's got such experience, and I'd like to keep her here. I think she'd want to stay here.
Yes.
She's got 2 7-year-old kids to raise, and this would give her some security. Give her some security. It would also take her position out of the election process. If it was a 3-year contract, it would come up right at election time, and I'm afraid they would use her as a pawn in their decision as to who they're going to vote for. So that would give her security. She's worked had a 1-year contract right now.
Well, I had a 3-year contract, and graciously, the council gave me an increase last year, but, so that changed the term of the contract.
Yeah, $5,000 isn't enough, honestly. That's
It
just my
was a
opinion.
modest increase because of COVID, but anyway.
May I just say something? I don't disagree with anything you said, but the typical procedure in which this is done is that we do our evaluations and the council votes to have somebody negotiate the contract with the manager. It's not an automatic thing that the mayor does that, first of all.
Well, I understand
And
that.
I think it's premature for us to be discussing specifics without our having to at least I think we should follow the procedures, because in the past, when we haven't, we've run into trouble.
Well,
So I don't disagree, honestly, I agree with, I would come up,
100%.
let me finish, I would probably suggest the same things that you're doing, but I would like to follow the procedure, because it helps us in the future.
we're working on the budget, and I want to get the money
We have.
earmarked for
we
the
have
budget.
we have other times to do this where we can, and I don't disagree with that. We have another pass at it. So we could, I think a proper thing is to direct Arlene to be sure that the line item for her salary is included. And we also have unassigned fund balance of $6 million, so we could always adjust the budget in the future. It's not like we're hamstrung if that line item doesn't do it, but I really would feel more comfortable if all of us do the evaluations, and we could set a time limit. Let's do it you know,
I did my
to
evaluation.
do the work.
That's
Well,
all I'm saying. I did mine.
all right.
What the
Did-
rest of you do is up to you.
Excuse me, but.
This is my suggestions,
it's-
period,
May I
bang,
finish
boom.
talking, please? And
End of conversation.
it's not the end of the conversation because you have a council person who is now speaking. And when we do our evaluations, they are supposed to be written so that the rest of us can look at your evaluation. And if you have it written, then I'd like to see the copy of it. And
He has it.
just as when I do mine, somebody could look at mine. I just am making a point that I would like to follow the procedure, even though we might come in to the same, we might end up at the same place. I just think it's not a good idea to be changing these processes that we've worked out over many years. And if we want to expedite it, what we could do is ask the council if they would be willing to have their performance evaluations done in a timely fashion in the next 2 to 3 weeks, something, I'd be fine with that. And then we could come back and do this. And then either way, we don't have to increase the line item because we have unassigned fund balance. So in the end, we could just adjust that. There's flexibility there. So does anybody want to do their evaluations in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk because Derek is next on the list. I can see it.
I was just gonna say that it's a couple things. One, there's no requirement that Arlene have a contract. In the past, that was far more common because there were effectively clauses regarding termination, but Florida law has sort of stripped that away. There's a maximum amount of compensation if she's terminated, and Arlene's contract now basically follows the same policies as the rest of the employees. So, and I feel it's a little unfair for her to be sort of collecting all her own comments. If it would make everyone more comfortable, you can send it all to me and I'll put together a small report of the comments and recommendations. And then we could submit it back and the council could discuss different opportunities. Because unfortunately, even if you share all of your reviews, you can't discuss them. So if you each have different positions on amount of increase or time for the contract or any other benefits, we're still going to be having the conversation again. And so if you'd like, you can submit them to me perhaps before the deadline for the August meeting, the first August meeting, and that way I could collate them and provide basically a recommendation based on the bulk of the council discussions, and that would narrow the discussion points for the actual decision.
Okay, Laura, do you want to talk again?
I do, sir. Thank you. I just want to point
You'll
out
be here all
that
night. Come on. I'm
That-
sorry, I'm being rude. I'm getting.
you are.
Yes, I'm losing my patience with you.
Let's like switch chairs around. But last year, 2 people turned in their evaluations of our city manager, correct? Out of everyone?
No, I had, as far as I had more comments that came back as emails and in different forms of the evaluation, yes.
Okay. But the official deadline, 2 people turned in. I'm just saying, everybody, get in because she's so fabulous. Like, let's just do it.
Well, I think what happened is there was an election in between when the deadline happened too. That was part of it as well. So other folks provided after because of the election. So, but I did receive comments.
I'm hearing everybody wants to turn in their evaluations as soon as possible so we can work on the budget. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, give you 2 weeks to turn it in.
You said August or whatever it is.
Is that all right?
By August.
I want to make one brief comment.
Yes, Fred.
Very brief, because I want to go home. I think we're crazy if we don't understand we're in a big inflationary period. Cost of living is going like this. And it's not going to get a heck of a lot better because we're going to print more money and distribute it, and that's going to make it go up more. So I don't know that we want to lock ourselves into a real low percentage of increase per year because I mean, cost of living could go up 10% in a year. It did back under another president some years ago.
Fred, I'm
Yeah.
going to interrupt you. My suggestion was that the cost of living for her would be the same as the cost of living for our consul. This year it was 2%.
Yeah.
And that changes every year.
Yeah.
So that would address your inflation. I agree with you as far as the inflation.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to put that into
Yeah.
her contract, that
Yeah.
she would, it would be adjusted every year
And I'm in agreement.
without going through this whole conversation every year.
I'm in agreement. I'm not sure 2% would get it, but that's just, I don't want to, I
Right.
think there's another time to talk about it.
Yes, exactly, after we've done
I
it.
agree with you in principle.
Okay, can we take a vote on having the evaluations in
Real quick.
You don't need a vote, is
Hey,
all.
Derek.
Need a vote.
Okay.
in 2 weeks?
Last thing, Derek Rooney, can you please bring us a copy of what all of our counterparts, city managers are paid? Because at the end of the day, if we're gonna do this for a 5-year period, I'd rather make her one of, if not the highest in Southwest Florida, and then let them work around it.
Well, I don't know about that.
So-
Sanibel's going for 250, so no offense.
Well, I mean, I just think if we're not gonna do it for 5 years, we might as well do it right and then not worry about if 2%'s enough. Let's just,
Yes.
so that's my thought.
Agreed.
Agreed, there's a lot to think about, so let's
Yes.
get our performance evaluation, and then we could talk, have all this discussion in a dialogue.
Did we agree that we weren't going to go with that long form?
You could do whatever you want, Courtney.
No, there's no you can do however you like. There was all different forms that I received last time.
Can we put a deadline of 2 weeks so that we can discuss this on the 21st?
Yes.
So we can work on our budget for next year?
Okay, I pushed my button. Is Lisa gonna be on the podium from now on?
No, I'm just a guest
Aww.
for this evening only.
That was nice though.
Thank you, Nicole.
And then I'd like to motion to adjourn.
I just had one announcement I wanted to make
Oh,
to you,
okay,
just
sorry.
very briefly, is that we do need to move our August 18th meeting to an evening meeting because it is the Lee County delegation, so I wanted to give enough notice to the public. And as long as that's all right with everyone, we'll go ahead and update the city calendar website. That's a day meeting, and that is the same day that the Lee County Legislature has decided to meet in that morning, and Matt and I usually attend that meeting in the morning.
Okay.
And before we adjourn, do we have any public comment?
Thank you, Derek.
Are we ready to adjourn? Anybody got?
So moved. Sorry.
So moved. Second? Roll call, please.
We don't have to vote.
No, we're out of here.